All right, I think we've hit critical mass. I'll get started here. Thanks for joining. I'm Jed Bradley. I'm the director of OPB's Policy Planning and State Operations team. If you're joining, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, and folks are kind of putting the number of sessions they've been involved as well. Let's see, and yes, Joe, I'll be advancing your slides. Just saw your chat. So on Monday, there will be two teams getting together for a kind of knockdown, drag out process that will be extraordinarily stressful and emotional. This is the legislative kickoff. So of course, I'm talking about the House and the Senate and the legislative session that's starting on Monday. But we're all, of course, rooting for our Huskies in the national championship game as well. Thank you for attending, and thanks in advance for your partnership during the upcoming session. We really couldn't do this work without all of you. And if you could humor me for a second, if you could raise your hand or your virtual hand, if this is your first legislative kickoff, we'd love to get a sense of that from folks. Awesome. Looks like quite a few new faces. Thanks for joining. A couple housekeeping things while you're doing that. We are recording this presentation. As you saw, we'll post it on the OPB webpage after this event. If you have any questions, just raise your hand, your virtual hand at the end of each section, or put questions in the chat, and then we'll kind of try to respond either during the presentation or after each section. And then we should have time at the very end for some Q&A. And on that note, we will have a Q&A session next Friday at noon. If you have any more questions after this event, and details for that were in my reminder email. We are thrilled to have added Alexis Mercedes Rink to our team as our new assistant director, as well as Shalom Malanga as our intern this year. Alexis, can you wave and say hi on Zoom here? Shalom has class, so she won't be joining us this morning.
Thanks, Jed. Hi, everybody. I have bangs and glasses now, so I'm pretty unrecognizable based on that picture, but really excited to be here. Thanks, Jed.
Thanks, Alexis. And we're also thrilled that we're still working with Charlotte Shannon. She left our team and is now working with Ian and Rashi in the UW Medicine Government Relations team, so still kind of in the mix here at UW. So here's the team you'll be hearing from this year from OPB. A few notes about our role. Generally, we produce budget briefs that I'm sure most of you have seen for major budget proposals during session. We track all bills relevant to the university and coordinate efforts with state relations to engage in the legislative process on behalf of the university. We coordinate responses to fiscal notes from the legislature, which Michael will talk about later. And then in addition, we respond to a wide range of data and policy questions from the governor's office, from the legislature and their staff, the UW administration, and plenty of others. So we might be in touch with you all for help with one or more of those items. I'll be the primary contact for the team for any general questions, and happy to point you to the right person if you don't know who to ask. Alexis will be leading bill tracking and analysis with the help of Lauren. She'll be reviewing and tracking Senate bills and helping with fiscal notes and information requests, and is the primary contact for our team if I am out or if you're sick of dealing with me. Lauren is our resident expert on LobbyGov, of course, and operating budget analysis. She'll be reviewing and tracking House bills and helping with fiscal notes and information requests. Michael is our lead on fiscal note assignments and review and approval, and is leading capital budget analysis. And then Shalom, our intern, is maintaining LobbyGov, sending out bill updates so when bills move or change, and helping with anything else that we need. As usual, we have never been successful without our resident policy analysts, as we call them. With Charlotte leaving for UW Medicine, we're now overwhelmingly a majority of cats on our team for the first time, so that'll be interesting. And with that, I'll pass it on to Lauren, who will go through bill tracking and LobbyGov.
Thanks, Jed. I know we have a lot of cats on our team, but we're all dog fans. So go dogs. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lauren Hatchett. I'm a senior policy analyst here at OPB. And as Jed said, thank you all for being here for previous sessions. And just thanks for all the support I know that you will provide us this year. My first legislative session was back in 2018 when I interned for OPB, and I truly am grateful for all the folks that I worked with these many years. I know I couldn't do it without your help. If you've attended these kickoffs in the past, this is where I tell you that I'm going to provide a very quick overview of the legislative process, bill tracking, and bill analysis, and also talk about LobbyGov. There will be many website addresses and resources along the way as well. So why does this matter? Legislative decisions impact higher education policy, UW operations, healthcare policy, and so many other things. Bill tracking and bill analysis provides a crucial opportunity to provide feedback on policies that will affect the UW. And it's critical that experts in the room or here on Zoom have a say in these decisions in order to ensure that a bill has the desired effect, it's implementable, and it is a benefit to our UW community. I'll start off by going over a few legislative terms that we'll use throughout the presentation, but if you're working with us, you're bound to hear these terms from us as well. The House of Origin, or the first house, is the chamber in which a piece of legislation originates. This can be from the House or the Senate. The opposite house, or the second house, this is the second chamber through which a piece of legislation moves. A substitute bill, which can be abbreviated as SSB, or substitute Senate bill, or SHB, substitute House bill. This is a new version of a bill that completely replaces the original bill. Striking amendment, or striker, is an amendment that removes everything and inserts a new bill. Engrossed, this can be abbreviated as E2S HB, or engrossed second substitute House bill. This is legislation into which one or more amendments have been incorporated, and it's also passed out of its chamber, or a chamber. Quick run through of the legislative process, not as exciting as Schoolhouse Rock, apologies. We always start with a bill introduction in either the Senate or the House. It's introduced by a member, and then it's referred to a committee. The committee then reads the bill and may decide to hold a public hearing, which is essentially an opportunity for partners and stakeholders to voice support or concerns. This is when someone from the state relations team or a campus expert is most able to provide feedback. The committee can then hold an executive session, which is when the committee members vote to pass, reject, or amend a bill. If it's passed, the bill may go to the floor for a vote. At this point, the full membership of the House or Senate can choose to pass, reject, or amend the bill once again. After passing the House of Origin, the bill goes through the same procedure in the opposite house, and we essentially restart the process. If amendments are made in the opposite house, the House of Origin must approve those changes or work to reconcile those changes. When the bill is accepted in both houses, the governor signs the bill into law, or he may veto all or part of it. Your timely assessments are absolutely essential to this process. Our team will review assessments and use information that you provide to determine what the best way is to move forward. So if you ever have any feedback that you don't feel totally comfortable putting into LobbyGov or sharing over email, just feel free to give any person on our team or the state relations team a call. Now that we've got the basics down, we're on to the fun part, which is to analyze legislation. Your first step is to read the bill. If you're working with an analyst on our team, we always include a direct link to the bill's homepage on the legislature's website. The homepage looks something like this, and it provides a fair amount of information. Feel free to explore, but the actual bill text is closer to the bottom of the page, so you'll want to scroll down. At the bottom of the homepage, you'll see available documents. Under bill documents, you will see a variety of bill versions. Please make sure you're reading the correct version of the bill or the current version of the bill. You can also find the bill report section. This can be really helpful as it provides a comprehensive summary of background and effects statements, which are prepared by committee staff. And again, it's important that you're reading the correct report to the correct bill version. If you are confused at all about which one is the current version, please contact us. Also, please note that while bill reports are really helpful in understanding a bill and what a bill does, it's not a substitute for actually reading the bill text. Assuming that we've clicked on the current version of a bill, we're on to even more fun part, which is reading. Unfortunately, this is only an example of a bill that would change the state seal of Washington and replace George Washington with our beloved UW mascot Dubs. But I'm sure that after next Monday, this will be an actual bill, right, Joe? As you're reading bills, please keep an eye out for the following markers. New sections. New section will be underlined, and this indicates that all the language in the section is new. Please read the entirety of the section very carefully. You also want to keep an eye out for struck out text, which indicates that this language is being removed from the existing code. Underlined text indicates that new language is being added to the code. So in this example, General George Washington is struck and Dubs the Husky is added. And hopefully this will be a real bill and we'll come out in strong support of this. When you're reading bills, please read carefully so we don't miss out on any important changes. If we want to document our support for a bill or opposition for a bill, we can do that in LobbyGov. Many of you are probably familiar with LobbyGov, but as a quick refresher to those who don't, LobbyGov is a platform used extensively in bill analysis and legislative affairs in our state. LobbyGov notifies OPB when a tracked bill has a hearing, when it is amended, and when it moves. Additionally, LobbyGov enables stakeholders across the university to assess legislation throughout the process. University partners who have been asked to review legislation can access LobbyGov at uw.lobbygov.com using your UW Net ID to log in. You may also find yourself on a page that is not bringing you to the UW Net ID login. Make sure you select the SAML login or the SAML login if you're not automatically redirected to the UW Net login page. If you need a user account, please contact anyone on our team and we can help set that up for you. If you are assigned the bill in LobbyGov, you will receive the following email that it definitely looks like spam, but it's not spam. Outlook might recognize it as spam, but you should get an email like this and it will tell you that you have a new bill assignment. You can log in directly to LobbyGov from this email. If for some reason you missed the email or you forget to provide an assessment, we will send you an email a few days before with a very gentle reminder asking you to provide some assessments. After you log into LobbyGov with your UW Net ID, you'll see this page. In LobbyGov, the to-do list shows any bills that are pending review. Make sure that you're reviewing the 68 session, which will show you bills from the first and the second halves of the biennium. I can see in this example, I'm just looking at bills from the second half of the biennium. It shows me from left to right that Senate Bill 5846 has been assigned. There's no companion bill. The bill status indicates that it's pre-filed, and I can see the abbreviated title for a quick reference. So this one concerns beaver ecosystem management, so it should be interesting. I can also see that my bill review is due on the 8th, so I should get to it. If I want to review this bill, I simply click Review Bill. After selecting Review Bill, you'll see this page. In the top left-hand corner, you can select Legislature Bill Page button to read the bill or review any documents like amendments or bill reports. You can also see if anyone else is assigned to this bill and read any analysis they may have already provided. For this example, I can see that Jed, Michael, and Alexis were assigned to this bill. If there are any notes, those will also appear here. And I can see in the notes that this bill might be of interest to the College of Environment, and for the purposes of this example, Alexis, Jed, and Michael have been asked to provide examples of assessments we've seen in the past. What makes a good and a not so good assessment? A helpful assessment provides a detailed summary on what the bill does and how it changes current policy. It summarizes how the change would affect the UW, and it recommends a position and a priority. By contrast, a less helpful assessment is limited and does not help assess the impact of the bill. It indicates concerns and recommends a high priority, but it doesn't detail what the concerns are. It also doesn't offer any amendments to alleviate those concerns or any helpful rationale for opposition. If you write an assessment like this, you will definitely get a call from our office. I'll say the worst assessment of all, though, is providing no assessment. So please respond to our emails. Back to the bill in question. Before I start my review of Senate Bill 5846, which concerns beaver ecosystem management, it would be helpful to read my team's thoughts. Just as an FYI, we'll share this presentation, so you don't have to read this whole thing. I've just pointed out a few key pieces here. In the past, we've had three standard prompts that we've asked you to respond to. This year we've changed it up and now we have 4. We still want you to assess the impact of the bill and provide any suggested amendments, but we've updated our 3rd question to better tie into the university's diversity blueprint goals. So for example, if a bill would mandate new reporting requirements for public meetings that take place on each of our campuses, your first thought might be, wow, there are a lot of public meetings that take place across the university. This is going to be really expensive. I know that's where my fiscal note brain goes first. But we want to push you and challenge you to think beyond the obvious costs that come with the bill. So instead, maybe think, oh, increased reporting could lead to improvements in accountability and transparency, or goal number 6 on the diversity blueprint. So if you have any additional questions when you come to this question, please feel free to reach out to us. We're also planning on having a more robust discussion during our Q&A session next week. In Jed's example, he attempted to answer this question, but I'm not going to give it too much thought because I don't think he took this very seriously. So I'll skip over that. 4th prompt is intended to be a catch-all. If there's anything you think we need to know about this bill, let us know. The more specific you can be, the better. Overall, just looking at Jed's assessment, it's short, it's to the point, but I think he hasn't given it a ton of thought. So I'm going to move on to Alexis and hope she's provided a better assessment. Right off the bat, I can tell that Alexis really dug into this bill. While we do read every bill, it is absolutely impossible for us to remember every bill. And what I like here is that Alexis has given me a brief overview and identified areas to pay attention to. She's noted here, if the UW does have lands that are current or former beaver habitats, then the UW may be impacted by Section 7. That's a great clue, hint to me, go read Section 7. She's identified potential amendments. This is great information to have, and we can share this with the state relations team if there's an opportunity to change this bill in Olympia. She's identified how this bill might advance the university blueprint. And she's also let us know that at the very bottom, while this is as written, it doesn't have any immediate fiscal impact to the UW and marks the bill with a neutral and low priority. I think it's really important to reiterate our team is tracking hundreds of bills, and absolutely not every bill can be the highest priority. It is really important, though, that if this particular bill really took off in Olympia, or if we got any questions about this bill, this Alexis's analysis gives a great starting point for us to start tackling this one. Finally, we have Michael's review of the bill. Michael has let us know that he thinks this bill will have significant and negative impacts on the UW, and we should oppose this bill. But he doesn't let us know what any of those impacts are. It's really short and sweet. And this is like one of the worst examples. It's very exaggerated. So thank you, Michael, for really playing the part here. I would say I haven't seen one quite this bad, but we do see reviews that have a very high priority marked with not a lot of information. So if you submit a review like this, you're guaranteed that we'll be calling you to get more information. At the bottom of the bill review page, you'll be asked to recommend a position and a priority. Our team is most interested in high priority, in bills that are marked as high priority. These bills have a significant positive or negative impact on the university, and they necessitate the highest level of attention by our team and the state relations team. Usually the fiscal impact can vary, but think like over $1 million a year. That's a high priority bill. Most bills that we see fall in the medium to monitoring priority levels, but you can find guidance on our website under the bill tracking and legislative resources page, or you can ask any of us if you're having trouble assigning a position or priority. Once you've completed your review, click yes, and then click save, and that's it. You've done your bill review. When you're reviewing bills, please ask yourself, what does the bill add or remove from existing law? Does the bill have a fiscal, programmatic, or operational impact? What amendments would you recommend? You all are the experts, and your explanation and feasibility and any specific impacts you can tell us truly steers if and how state relations approaches this bill in Olympia. In general, please remember to be clear and concise. Note any areas of confusion. Provide us some education. Give us a sense of the importance and scale. Pay attention to the version of the bill that you're responding to, and please respond as soon as possible. I should also note here that although assessments are generally private, they are viewed by a small group of people on campus and are subject to public records requests. If you have any questions or run into any issues, please feel free to reach out to anyone on our team. And as I previously mentioned, we have many resources under our bill tracking and legislative resources page, which can be found on our website. Does anybody have any questions? I counted like a 7-second very quickly. So I think we could probably move on. Great. Okay. Well, I will.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
This is Stephanie Farquhar. I have a question. I was sure somebody else was going to ask it, but I'll jump in. How do you decide who you share the bill with and ask for feedback from?
You mean from our perspective?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. We read the bill. We do have, I mean, from a bill text, we can get a sense of like, oh, this bill is impacting medical providers. So it's like, oh, obviously send it to UW Medicine. But if there is a bill that you on your own have read and you're like, actually, we do need to track this, that we love taking any help we can get on bill tracking. So,
so it can be solicited or unsolicited.
Oh, yes.
Okay, got it.
And
Thanks.
we have a pretty long contact list and folks around the university, but please let us know, especially if there's anybody else you think needs to read a bill. We might send it to you, and you might think of a colleague that needs to read it too, and that's really helpful. We're not going to catch everything, and we're doing our best reviewing literally hundreds of bills every day.
Totally makes sense. Thank you.
All right. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll try to answer those there. But Michael, take it away with the most exciting topic, fiscal notes.
Thanks, Lauren, and good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Lance, and I'm a policy analyst in OPB, and I'll be going over our fiscal note development process. I'll start by just thanking you all in advance because I know fiscal notes can be stressful and a lot of work sometimes. Session hasn't even started yet, and we already have 6 of them due today. And I know I've been on emailing with a lot of you even this morning. So just thank you again. So a fiscal note is an estimate of a bill's fiscal impact. Fiscal notes are just to analyze the financial impact of legislation. These are considered to be highly objective, and our work should be replicable by the Office of Financial Management in Olympia. Importantly, this is a separate process from a general policy review, any type of advocacy, or the bill assessment that you do in LobbyGov that Lauren just discussed. So fiscal note shows how a bill would fiscally impact the UW, usually over 6 years. It must be based on the least expensive way to reasonably implement the bill. And it is always tied to a specific version of a bill. So each time a bill is amended or substituted, a new fiscal note will likely be requested. Fiscal notes help legislators evaluate a bill's cost and the merits before deciding whether to pass, reject, or amend the bill further. And a fiscal note really informs everyone throughout the process, from legislators, staff, journalists, lobbyists, and anyone else involved in the process. However, really the most important thing to know about a fiscal note is that they inform legislative decisions that impact UW. If a bill passes, fiscal notes will be used to determine how much funding we receive to implement the bill. Therefore, fiscal notes need to be responsive and accurate. If we don't respond to a fiscal note, the legislature may assume the bill doesn't impact us and won't provide us funding. If a bill does have costs associated, legislators won't know to amend the bill in a way that might mitigate the impact or to provide funds to offset the fiscal impact. Another important thing is that we want to maintain our credibility with fiscal notes. If one fiscal note is way off base, the legislature might not take future submissions and cost estimates from us as seriously, which is something we work very hard to avoid. The tricky part is the process. We usually have 72 hours between the time we get a fiscal note and the time we have to respond. The UW is engaged in a huge variety of activities and programs, just seen through the amount of different people on this call. So fiscal notes similarly cover a large variety of topics. We could get a fiscal note on everything from shellfish aquaculture to tuition setting authority to police pursuits. Again, our team tries to be familiar with as many UW relevant topics as possible, but we very much need your expertise in fiscal analysis and ensuring we have included all necessary units in the process. We really rely on all of you to help to quickly prepare accurate and defensible fiscal notes. So I'll just give a brief overview of the process here. So the first step is legislative staff request a fiscal note for a given bill, and the Office of Financial Management assigns it to relevant agencies, including the UW if applicable. I will receive the request, assign it to one of the analysts on our team, that's either myself, Lauren, or Alexis, and then we'll start reviewing it and trying to figure out who within UW to contact as assessors. The assigned analyst will then reach out to the assessors, that's all of you, with a due date, hopefully some bill information, and some initial thoughts or the beginnings of a draft depending on the topic and their capacity. You all, our assessors, will coordinate with others on the email and in your department, draft the narrative and calculations, and send it back to your OPB analyst for review. Usually there is some or a lot of back and forth about details, assumptions, inconsistencies or other things between the analysts and assessors. So feel free to email us and communicate. Often the earlier we start the back and forth, the better it is, just because of how short of time we have to respond. There may also be other conversations with other agencies or other higher education institutions so that we're all in alignment. And we'll try and, if we do have those conversations, we'll try and provide that information to you as well. Once the fiscal note narrative and calculations are finalized, the OPB analyst will put that into the fiscal note system. I'll do a final review and check of the fiscal note and look for any errors or points of confusions, and then I'll ultimately release it back to the Office of Financial Management by the due date. OFM will then review the fiscal note, distribute it back to legislators and staff who requested it. I'll note that just in rare cases, OFM may request a revision if the fiscal note is different from other institutions or they disagree with our assumptions, which is why we really do so much work on the front end to try and guarantee greater alignment before the fiscal note is submitted. So now we'll actually talk about how to respond to the fiscal note request. So again, you'll receive an email from one of us if we think a fiscal note is relevant to you. This will include a link to the bill and a narrative Word document and Excel spreadsheet in SharePoint where you will provide your analysis. When you receive the email, note the due date and respond to let us know that you've received it and that you're working on it. And note, please, that these fiscal notes take priority over bill reviews and LobbyGov or any other general feedback. They're really our top priority during session. The next step is just to read the bill and then coordinate with other people on the email, and again, loop in others you think are needed. So other units, other folks within your unit, or even folks at Bothell and Tacoma if relevant. Please pay attention to both the narrative and Excel templates and fill them out as thoroughly and accurately as you can. And then once you have finished filling in the templates, let us know that you've completed your draft, either by email or by tagging us in the document. So now we'll go ahead and talk about the two templates you'll receive from us, starting with the narrative template. Each narrative includes 4 pieces. The first of which is the summary, which provides a brief overview of how the bill impacts UW. If the bill has no fiscal impact to us, then that's the only part you need to fill out. If there is an impact, however, you will need to fill out one or more of the following impact narratives and tables. So those 3 are cash receipts, expenditures, and then capital. So cash receipts typically are only relevant to bills regarding the collection of a tax or a fee for UW. So those include things like tuition or library fees. Expenditures are much more common and are the cost to actually implement the bill. Probably the most common thing we have is additional staff, FTEs. So so please make sure to indicate if additional staff time would be required. And then the final element is capital. So these are capital FTEs or other expenditures. And usually you won't run into them, but if you do, just let us know. And again, probably the most common, you'll be using the expenditure sections, but the cash receipts and capital less often. So here is an example of what we expect from the narrative. As you see, we've included a brief summary of the bill at the top. Then the expenditure section below is filled out with more detail, and it includes a section-by-section narrative of the cost drivers, as well as the total impact per fiscal year. In this example, there are no cash receipts or capital expenditures, which again is not uncommon. So the second document you'll receive from us is the fiscal analysis template, which is an Excel file. This is where you'll place the numbers that your narrative supports. As you can see here, please break out expenditures by object code. In the Excel file you'll receive, each of these objects has a comment with further explanation for what it is. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. So in this bill, the bill would require a professor to attend a work group in Olympia. This requires a small amount of FTE, as you can see at the bottom, only 0.02 per year, which works out about to just a couple hours a month. This results in the bill costing 2% of the professor's annual salary, as well as 2% of their annual benefits. You'll also see that there are some travel costs to drive to and from Olympia, $150 per fiscal year. If, for example, the professor would also need to buy materials for those meetings, they would put those costs under goods and services. Please note that this example is from a few years back, but the new templates will have updated fiscal years for this biennium. So what if you read the bill and just aren't sure what to do? We have two pieces of advice. First and foremost, please reach out to us and talk to your analyst. And the second piece is just give us your best estimate. Resist the urge to say we don't know and throw up your hands, because if a bill actually costs money and we say we just don't know, this will rarely result in us receiving money and creates unfunded mandates for us, which we really try to avoid. And finally, just some real helpful final tips and reminders for you to reference when drafting a fiscal note. Again, fiscal notes take priority over general bill analysis. Respond to us as soon as possible. Loop in others as needed. Avoid indeterminate responses. Again, explain everything and explain why there is no impact if there is no impact. When you're writing the analysis, write for a general audience and try to avoid jargon and then spell out acronyms. And then identify and explain all assumptions and make sure your calculations are repeatable and understandable. And then report the bill's incremental impact over current law. So that's new costs over current costs. And identify costs and receipts as one-time or ongoing. And remember that we're working in current dollars and don't factor in things like inflation or cost of living adjustments. And then consider also implementation dates. So think about what fiscal years will be affected, whether it's the current one or future ones going forward. And then if additional staff or time is needed, we really need to know the title, the full-time annual salary, the benefits rate or classification of the person, and the number of hours or amount of FTE needed for those positions. And then just remember, we're under a 72-hour deadline. So we just really need your best estimate and your best guesses, and appreciate all your hard work. We do have some resources available on our website. After this presentation is over, you'll be able to find a copy of this presentation, as well as a fiscal note example and some helpful tips and reminders. I think that wraps that up for me. I know we're a bit short on time, but happy to take a quick question or two if there are any.
Don't see any questions, but we have time. We'll have time at the end as well.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, and I'll go ahead and hand it off to Jed.
All right, so now that we've covered the essential process, we'll kind of give you a bit of an outlook for what we're expecting to see this session. This is a short session because it's an even-numbered year. It'll be 60 days scheduled from January 8th to March 7th, and there will be a possibility of one or more 30-day special sessions, which we haven't had in a few years, so knock on wood. Supplemental budgets are usually our opportunity to course correct based on changing revenue forecasts, cash flows, caseloads. As a reminder, the legislature set a 2-year budget last year, so this is just changes to that. They already set most assumptions for things like faculty and staff compensation or collective bargaining agreements, benefits, that kind of thing. There could be changes to that, but we're not expecting anything too major. Bill introductions start with a numerical progression from the end of the previous session. So bills that were introduced last year that didn't pass are still eligible for consideration. And we call those zombie bills when they come back alive. You might already have some in your tracking list. They might move, they might change. If you need us to add anybody new onto an existing bill that starts moving, please let us know and we're happy to do that. The Economic and Revenue Forecast Council released their November forecast a couple months ago. It increased revenue projections for the current and upcoming biennium. It's been pretty consistently doing that in the last few revenue forecasts. As usual, though, with these recent forecasts, they noted a decent amount of uncertainty and risks moving forward. So just something to keep in mind. And the governor used that November forecast to craft his 2024 supplemental budget proposals. Those were released in mid-December, and we have a full OPB brief on our website outlining the changes in those proposals. At a very high level, the governor would at least partially fund all of the university's supplemental operating budget requests. Joe will go over those later. The governor also added a couple priority items to support a semiconductor teaching lab at UW and hire some grant writers to support what they're calling the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Program. It's to assist tribal and community groups with grant writing. And then the governor's capital budget would add almost $50 million in new state funding in the supplemental budget for capital projects, and the majority of our capital requests that we submitted in the supplemental year. And Joe will go over those as well. As a reminder, we will have budget proposals from leadership in the House and the Senate over the course of session. Should be in a couple months. It's usually kind of toward the end. We will review those as usual and post budget briefs on our briefs tab, which is the first arrow there on the screen. And then we also have the OPB blog where we will post updates to budget proposals and revenue forecasts as well. Any questions on that before I send it over to Joe? All right, main event. Joe, take it away.
Main event. Main event is probably not accurate. No, thank you for everyone for joining. I will echo the thanks that were offered at the outset. We need everybody on this call to help us. And we have great people on our teams, Morgan Hickle, Jordan Karen on the state relations team, Ian Goodhue, Rashi Gupta, Charlotte Shannon on the medicine team, who are sort of front lines in Olympia on the ground, on the marble. But we need all of you to continue doing the great work that you do. And I'll just thank OPB team who works year round to get us set up to be successful in Olympia. Also the facilities team. I see John Wetzel, who putting these decision packages together for the facilities requests, for the capital requests, and for the operating requests, is a ton of work and sets us up for success. Having a really good governor's budget means we had really good materials that we submitted in our decision packages. So thank you everyone for that work. And our ability to even if a bill is really scary or really bad, getting good feedback on the front end from campus partners is absolutely critical, because while it's difficult, it makes people like me it makes other people think like I know what I'm talking about when you all help educate us and inform us on how things really work and what impacts might be. So just want to underscore the importance of folks doing really solid bill analysis. I look at those all the time. Particularly when somebody asks me something and I can just go on that system and look very quickly. It's hugely impactful. So thank you for that. I will try and be relatively brief here. Mostly want to just sort of refresher, and I know it sounded like, at least at the front end, there were a lot of new folks. You also can be evangelists in terms of telling others and reminding others, particularly in how you engage with Olympia. I think people feel like they can't do anything. They can't respond to anything. Yes, you can do some things, but we just got to be careful. We are a state agency and we are state employees. And so there are things we can and can't do. So to the slide, yes, you can. You are all, you all have the ability to engage in the political process as any other person in this country. You just got to do it on your own email and your own time. So we just got to make sure that those lines are clear. You can use your UW affiliation if you explicitly state that you are, unless you coordinate with us, unless you explicitly state, I am not speaking on behalf of the university. Obviously, you can educate elected officials. That's what we try and do often. And so we will lean on many of you to help us do that. We will get lots of legislative requests during the legislative session about all kinds of things. And so your help with those is very much appreciated. And so that's definitely something you can do. You can actually lobby. We lobby all the time. We just have to report it. We have to make sure that we're keeping track of particularly the in-person and Zoom meetings that we're doing. And when we're asking for something, that particularly those things that are on the university's agenda, that we're tracking all those hours. And you all should get an email quarterly from Jordan asking for all those meetings that you've done throughout the year. And so that's what that's for, to make sure that that we're staying in compliance. I think just a general rule is that if you're thinking about setting up a meeting with the legislator about something related to the legislative session, whether it's a bill or it's a funding issue or an idea, please just reach out to us. I promise it will go better if you talk to us first. We know these folks, we know what else is going on in terms of the context. And so that is our main request, is just please coordinate with us. I promise it'll go better. All right, next slide, please. Things that you shouldn't do. Grassroots lobbying is effectively, I have my email address and I have my email account, and I email everybody that I know or everybody in my department, and I say, hey, you all need to write your legislator and tell them to support House Bill 1000 because it's a really important thing to do, or vote no against that because it's terrible. That is grassroots lobbying. We cannot do that. There are lots of folks that do that on their non UW accounts or as a part of an organization that does that. That's fine. That falls into the category of, you are a citizen and therefore you can engage in the political process, but we can't do that on UW accounts. We cannot engage in political campaigns. We cannot be a part of any initiative work. As many of you probably know, there are a bunch of initiatives that are going to be on the ballot this fall. Please stay far away from those, at least during work hours with your work email address. Again, a bunch of information on this. If you have questions, email us. We have a bunch of information on this on our state relations website, and appreciate your compliance with those things so that we can all stay above board there. I should make one more note about grassroots lobbying. UW Impact, which is a subset of the UW Alumni Association, if you're interested in grassroots lobbying, they are the place to do that because it's legal. So please reach out to Courtney Acitelli to make that happen. Okay, so the next slide is tips for meeting with legislators. So we are working with a bunch of folks who will come down to the legislature and work on either our agenda items or there may be bills that we need folks to come down and talk to them about because they're either a problem or something we really like. Here are some tips about coming down and meeting with legislators. And a lot of this, I should say, is a little bit different because Zoom testimony is a thing now, and we could talk about that if folks are interested. But for those that you are coming to Olympia or might come to Olympia, please be early. The parking stinks. The traffic usually stinks coming down, and it's just good to be early as you're coming to Olympia. So plan more time than you think it's going to take. Be flexible. These members have usually 4 meetings an hour, and so some run long, some run short. It's going to be, some need to get rescheduled because there's votes or a committee runs long. It happens, so please be flexible. Be prepared and concise. Again, there are mostly 15-minute meetings is the standard in Olympia. A lot of times it's shorter than that if you're talking to somebody in the hallway. So we don't have a lot of time. Usually we try and bring some materials to make follow-up easier, but please be quick. Be gracious. Obviously, we don't talk bad about other institutions, programs, legislators, political parties. We are state employees, and we try and take the high road in every way possible. Concrete examples. I think sometimes we try and talk a little too technical, sometimes even in testimony. These are normal people who probably don't know a whole lot about the things that you're talking about. So explaining to them, just like you'd be talking to somebody at a cocktail party or at lunch, is usually what we advise folks to do. And if you get a question, particularly in testimony, and you don't know the answer, the golden rule is it's okay to say, I don't know, but I can follow up with you after the hearing or after the meeting. I do that all the time. It's the right thing to do. Please do that if you don't know the answer. Next slide, please. So our agenda, as a reminder, this agenda is not set by me. It is not set by Ian or Rashi or Morgan or Jordan or anybody else. Set by the President Provost, and we have a relatively standardized process to set this agenda ahead of a supplemental session. It's a bit more ad hoc, but effectively it is items that are largely carryovers from the previous session. Areas where we fell short, and so you'll see that in our agenda this year. In terms of the session in general, as Jed mentioned, it's a short session. The sort of foundation in terms of who's in charge in Olympia is pretty much the same. We still have a Democratic governor. All the statewide electeds are governors, and the Democrats are in the majority, in strong majorities in the House and Senate. We do have some new folks within those caucuses that are in new positions. Representative Stokesbury is the new House Minority Leader, taking over for J.T. Wilcox. Representative Chris Corey is the new ranking member on Appropriations, a committee we care a lot about, as you can imagine. But the committee chairs in terms of higher education committees and the ranking members should be the same heading into session. And I think, no surprise, the big legislative topics: housing, cost of living, behavioral health, climate change, things that are not particularly new. But those will be I think the main items. And of course, we're heading into an election year, which is every 2 years for all the House members and every 4 years for Senate members. Next slide, please. Our operating budget priorities. Again, these are all three effectively carryovers from last year, items where we fell short. UW School of Dentistry RIDE program. This is effectively whammy for dentists. And our goal here is to double the number of students trained out of our home base in Spokane, but this is a statewide program, particularly in central and eastern Washington and rural parts of the state. And our goal is to double the program, keep students in Spokane for an extra year. This pairs nicely with a federal earmark we received, and they would be located, if we're successful in our new building, co-located with our medical students in our partnership with Gonzaga and Spokane. So very excited about this and hope we can get across the finish line. Next item, again, a carryover from last year, the Allen School Startup Program. As Ed has reminded me, this is sort of like STARS Light. The legislature has been incredibly supportive in terms of expanding enrollment at the Allen School. This is really about focused on first generation underrepresented students, building a cohort, and making sure that those students are successful in getting to degree. This had been previously funded by philanthropic funds, which are expiring. This is really about getting the state to support these students in this program in a permanent and ongoing fashion. And then the last item is something we've worked on for a few years, and I give a lot of folks down at Medicine, including my colleagues in government relations, a lot of credit. Hospital support. Obviously, our hospitals have been in some pretty significant crisis, particularly since COVID, and serve a very unique role in the state among other hospital systems. And so we are asking the state again to be financial partners in that mission. And so that will be a huge part of our work down in Olympia again this year. On the capital budget, we have effectively one request for bonded state bonds, and that is the design money for the modernization of chemical sciences in Bagley Hall. This is a sort of a reimagined project, but one that was on our agenda last year that will effectively queue up our big capital ask for 2025. And I think we have Dean Harris coming to Olympia less than a week from now. So we're going to get started early on that one. And again, hope to bring that across the finish line. That was the only capital budget item from our agenda last year that didn't get funded. And so very important that we get that across the finish line this year. And then a relatively new account, the Climate Commitment Account, as a trailer for the Climate Commitment Act, which was passed a couple sessions ago. These are projects, 6 projects that are about decarbonizing our 3 campuses and medical center footprint, in addition to the Clean Energy Institute. And there are funds available to help do this work. We are obviously a covered entity under this law, and so this helps us start the efforts to decarbonize our campuses and get us into compliance with the CCA. Next slide, please. I think I've already talked about all these things. You know, again, I would just say thank you again all for your efforts. This takes a team for us to be successful in Olympia, and we don't even know. I'm going to need somebody that I've never talked to before. Like, we're going to need to talk like 10 times during session because of a bill that I don't even know about yet. So like, thank you in advance for doing that. And our team just relies on campus experts so much to be successful in Olympia and to have good outcomes. So again, if you're planning to come to Olympia, or if you have an Olympia related question or a session related question, reach out to one of us. We're pretty easy to get a hold of. Our cell phones are on the state relations website. We're pretty good at email. So just let us know. That's us with the cell phones. Exactly. So I think that's all I have. We've got a couple minutes for questions if there are some.
I think we technically have until quarter after, so
Okay.
plenty of time. David, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Dave Sundine from undergraduate admissions. My question is about the fiscal notes. And if you have any guidance, I always struggle with the threshold between no impact and some impact, but that won't require actual FTEs or new systems. You know, some things are not light lifts, but we could do it without additional FTEs and systems. And obviously some things are can be trivial. And I'm just wondering if you have any guidance on there of what that threshold might be, like a percentage of FTE, any guidance at all. Just thank you.
Michael, do you want to take a stab at that and then I'll fill in?
Yeah, I can try. I will say we also struggle a bit with this. I think, and Jed, correct me if you disagree, but I think kind of $50,000 is a good kind of benchmark for us. If it's going to cost under, then you know, it's going to be no impact or pretty minimal impact. But if it's going to be more than that, then that's something we probably really want to cost out.
Yeah, and in general, the state is unlikely to fund anything under that threshold. We sometimes say that something will be absorbed within existing resources. In other words, if you have a staff member that would do that work, normally it's similar to what they're already doing, slight changes in process, that kind of thing. We're very unlikely to get that amount of funding, but there have been examples of $8, $10, $15,000 a year provisos. To some extent, the amount of administrative work that it takes for the state to allocate that out, for us to get the expenditure authority, for us to set up a budget, all of that, it almost makes it not worth it. But we do want to show our cost if there is some, and they can decide whether to fund it or not. So do your best.
Great, thank you. Just quick clarification: are you talking 50,000 a year or 50,000 over the length of the fiscal note?
Per year is usually kind of the threshold that the legislature you know, pays attention to, but they will in some cases fund us for less than that. So I would say just do your best to estimate the impact, even if it is under 50, and they'll choose to fund it or not.
Thank you. That really helps.
anything else? Thank you all. We really appreciate your partnership during session. Never hesitate to reach out to any of us in OPB or state relations or UW Medicine, depending on where you are at in the university. And go Dogs on Monday. And we're looking forward to another session working with all of you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.